Rocky, hole-in-one locating. Thank you for joining us in our locate series called series. Sometimes I mispronounce it a lot, and the sun's really in my eyes, so I'm going to go right over here. Series on how in the hell does this work? This video is on antenna modes. How many are there? How many antenna modes are there in your machine? Think about that. Let me show you something here as I turn on my opened up machine. We'll get to that in a minute. If you go to your antenna mode button on the radio detection, it looks like this. And that's the symbol you're looking for. There's one mode. There's another mode. There's another mode. There's another mode. There's another mode. So there's quite a few. Metrotech, they're all very similar. When you open them up, you'll notice 3 or 4 different antenna modes. The answer to the question, maybe we should wait to the end of the video. No, it's 2. There's a peak mode and a null mode. They're both used for different things. So in your receiver, there are a series of antennas. There's horizontal antenna. There's some vertical antennas. In this machine, there's 4. They're spaced at very set distances from one another. And they're always comparing the information back and forth between each other. That information is translated into 2 different ways: a peak mode and a null mode. And they operate very similar to how they sound. So a peak mode is, if my foot is the utility and I'm going over it, it gets louder as it gets over the center. So, beep, or beep. That was very impressive. I hope you were impressed. Next one is null mode. It gets quieter over the utility. Beep, beep. Again, very impressive, if I do say so myself. Those are your 2 types of antenna modes. In general, null mode, you notice will have an arrow on it, and I'll show you that shortly. That is used to seek and to get you in the general direction of where you're looking at. And then peak mode will get you directly over the top of the utility. So if in doubt, always mark peak, okay? But they're both used for different things, and it's actually comparing the both of them and where they're each getting the signal that lets us know how good our locate is, right? If null is in one spot and peak is in another spot, then we've got some work to do to figure out why that is. Maybe we're on too high of a frequency. Maybe we should be ring clamping instead of direct connecting. There could be a host of reasons. So come on over here and I'll show you what we got. I'm hooked up on a utility down the other end of the meadow here. And we'll turn this on. And right now, this symbol here, we are in peak mode. So as I get close to the utility, which is over here on the edge of the lawn, you're going to notice I get louder and louder. Look, I'm actually going to turn down the gain a little bit there. Right, so I'm actually turning down the gain. There you go. So you could see how as we approach the utility, it gets louder and louder and louder. Actually puts a little check there, right over the center of the utility, which is right here. So take note on the ground where we're at there. Look at here, right there. The other mode is null mode. So if we start with null mode and we walk, you can hear it's already noisy. And then it goes quiet. Now do you see the arrows on the machine? So null mode helps us seek. So let's do that again. We'll come over here. So you can hear it saying, Rocky's looking, walk around, walk around. Oh, I think I'm getting something. Go that way, go that way. Now, null mode tells me, see how it's a pretty big path there, isn't it? That utility is right in this area. But see how I'm kind of getting a little bit of a broad signal. So I know I'm close. So now I'm going to go to peak mode. That's that signal. And I'm going to mark right over the top of it. And you could see earlier when we did null mode, let's go back to null mode. That null mode is saying it's in that spot too, and there's not a large variation going on there. Okay, let's turn up the gain a little bit more to see if that helps the null mode. So null modes, see, struggling a little bit. Peak mode. Null mode. So we're checking to see a couple of things. Are they close to the same spot? How different of a location is it? That's what lets us know how distorted our utility is. In this case, I can tell there's a little bit of distortion. You could too. But nothing significant. We were talking inches. The other thing I should show you, which I haven't, is there are some different modes. That's just peak mode, but it's kind of a longer build, a slower build. We use that often for utilities that are very deep. You see, it's just a slower, doesn't have that rapid response. Different manufacturers have modes like this, which is really great, especially if you're a newer locator. It has the null mode. You can see the arrows and the peak together. It's doing all of the gain for me. You'll notice I'll keep my dang thumb off the buttons this time. So see, there you go. So the bar is telling me where the peak is, and the arrows are telling me where the null is. And you can see that those arrows come together at the same spot that the bar is coming together. So the null and the peak agree that this is a good locate. You could go ahead and mark this. So you may have different selections in your menu. That's called a double peak. Okay? You may have different selections in your menu, but remember, there's only two modes. There's peak and there's null. Null helps us find the utility, and we check null against peak to see how good our signal is, if there's any distortion and if we should mark it. Also remember, always mark peak. Thank you, Rocky with Hole in One.